My name's Alex Underwood. I'm the Managing Director of Empire Energy. It's great to be back at SEAAOC 2020 here in Darwin. We've got some very exciting developments from Empire Energy to share with you today regarding the drilling of our Carpentaria 1 well in the Beetaloo Basin and our exciting plans for the year ahead. Empire is listed on the ASX. Our code is EEG. We have a market cap of around $120 million. And we're now well capitalised, having raised around $18 million over the course of this year. We have a very strong and supportive shareholder base, and our directors have invested over $6 million cash in the company over the last 2.5 years. We have a very strong board of directors and management team which continue to grow as our company grows. For example, John Warburton was the individual who identified the potential of the McArthur Basin for our company back in 2011. He has an excellent relationship with traditional owners and with a lot of stakeholders across the territory. Very recently, we've appointed Peter Cleary to the board, who will play a critically important role in helping us to commercialise our properties in years ahead, given his long and distinguished career in oil and gas. And also we've been building our high quality management team to help us execute our work programs. Empire has an enormous acreage position across the Northern Territory's McArthur Basin and Beetaloo Sub-Basin, around 58,000 square kilometres under lease, and that gives us both exposure to the Beetaloo Basin but also the McArthur Basin Central Trough, of which we have the vast majority. Well, the big news for Empire at the moment is that we've just drilled Carpentaria 1. This is only the second well drilled in the Beetaloo Sub-Basin since the lifting of the fracking moratorium, and we're delighted with the results that we've achieved. The well was drilled to 1,915 metres. It was done safely and responsibly, and we've had some really exciting results in terms of encountering a very thick section of Velkerri Shale, which doesn't only contain gas but also hydrocarbon liquids, otherwise known as condensate, which we believe will enhance the economics of our project. To give you a sense of the location of this well, so we're on the eastern side of the Beetaloo Basin. The well's only located around 5 kilometres from the Carpentaria Highway, which gives us good access to local services and infrastructure. It's also very close to the pipeline which traverses the Beetaloo out to the McArthur River mine. And we believe that not only does that pipeline offer the potential for early commercialisation opportunities, but also that right of way will allow for further infrastructure development in future. So going to our exciting results of this well, what this slide shows you is a simplified log section of 3 key wells drilled across the basin. On the left we have an Origin's Amungi Northwest 1 well. In the middle we have Santos's Tanumbirini 1 well, and on the right is our Carpentaria 1 well. While these wells all encountered the Velkerri Shale at different depths, we have normalised to the top of the Velkerri to give you an indication as to the thickness and gas richness of the respective wells in the Velkerri. As you can see on the right, we have encountered a very thick section of Middle Velkerri, comparable to that of Tanumbirini 1, which was the deepest well drilled in the basin and which Santos has just achieved great flow rates on. Not only is our well, has it encountered a very thick section of Velkerri Shale, but also the yellow and green colours as opposed to the red colours in the wells of our neighbours are indicating the presence of liquid hydrocarbons in our well, and this is a very exciting development for us. We know, based on the US shale experience, that the presence of liquids can substantially enhance the economics of the drilling of wells and therefore underwrite further development. So we're very excited about this and we look forward to further appraisal activity next year. This well was drilled in a 40,000 acre fault block that we are calling our Phase 1 work program area. This is only a tiny subset of the overall acreage position we hold in the Northern Territory, and yet just this initial area contains substantial running room for further appraisal and development activities. To give you a sense of the scale of this, In the major US shale basins now, operators are regularly drilling down to 160 acre spacing and often even less. So what this gives us is the opportunity for potentially hundreds of wells just in this initial area in future. Furthermore, with the drilling of this well now complete, we can definitively tie our seismic data to the well, and what it's showing us is that the Velkerri Shale is gently dipping towards the north of this fault block, and we believe that will give us a lot of optionality around where to land the optimal wells to get the optimal combination of not only gas flow rates but also liquids contribution. We carried out an extensive formation evaluation program on this well. We did a full suite of logs right through the Velkerri. We carried out DFITs, which are diagnostic fracture integrity tests, and also we took 50 large diameter sidewall cores. A few examples of the sidewall cores can be seen on this slide. We have sent all of this data over to W.D. Von Gonten and Co.'s labs in Houston, Texas. They are known as one of the preemptive and most experienced shale gas core analysis firms in the world. And we see this as really critical that we use global best practice to inform us about the geology within our project, but also how to carry out future activities. What this analysis will allow us to do is optimise the design of our fracture stimulation and flow testing program, which is planned for next year. Earlier this year, Netherlands Sewell & Associates, a highly respected US oil and gas resource assessment firm, gave us our inaugural prospective resource assessment. We have a number of play types that have been assessed in that report. Unfortunately, the Kyalla did not come in this well. It was shallower than anticipated, but it only contributed a very small proportion of our overall prospective resource. Netherlands Sewell had assessed that in EP 187, the Velkerri Shale would contain around 2.4 TCF of gas. Clearly, we need to reassess that, given that the shales have come in thicker and we have identified the presence of liquids in our gas, which previously had been assumed would be dry gas. And also we have a very large prospective resource in the Barney Creek. We will be focusing our efforts in the period ahead on our Beetaloo Basin property, but we do look forward to opening up the McArthur Basin to the north, which we believe has enormous potential. So we are located in the eastern margin of the Beetaloo. Immediately to our west is Santos. Santos have just achieved outstanding flow rates on the second flow testing program of their Tanambarini 1 well, and we congratulate Santos for those great results. To their west are Origin. Origin have made substantial investments in their properties and continue to do so, including the recent drilling of the Kyalla 117 well, which we understand will have results coming soon. We also note that back in 2018, Origin, in a technical paper they gave at the APIA conference, predicted the presence of the liquids-rich window of the Velkerri Shale on the basin's flanks, and we've now proven that this liquids-rich window exists. We note that the next well Origin is planning to drill will be a fracture-stimulated horizontal well called Velkerri 76, and you know we wish them the best of luck for that drilling. The Beetaloo is quite remote in the Australian gas context, but there are lots of markets for this gas. Australia's east coast is facing a serious shortfall of gas production in the years ahead, particularly as the Bass Straits fields decline. And you know, with the Northern Gas Pipeline now connecting the Northern Territory to Australia's east coast, there is a path to the east coast markets for this gas. But also it's important to note that Darwin is already a major oil and gas hub. So there are 2 large LNG plants that are sending cargoes of LNG to Asia every day, and we see ample scope for that capacity to be increased in the years ahead. But also we are supportive of the Northern Territory government's plans to look to develop a downstream gas manufacturing sector as part of the use of this gas, and we believe that given the enormous resource potential of this basin, there will be plenty of gas to go into multiple markets. As I mentioned, Darwin is already sending gas to Asia every day, but the demand for gas into Asia, particularly delivered by LNG, is expected to grow massively over the years ahead. Currently, the world's economy is going through an energy transition, with global governments encouraging and in many cases mandating renewable energy. As Angus Taylor recently said, as part of the federal government's gas-fired recovery plan, gas is the perfect complement to renewables, because when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing, gas can be quickly turned on to complement those energy sources and provide baseload power, obviously with significantly lower CO2 emissions than coal. Earlier this year, BP released their 2020 Energy Outlook. The BP Energy Outlook each year is keenly reviewed by the industry because it's known as one of the most respected sources of information around future energy trends globally. And a very interesting element of this year's Energy Outlook was that in a rapid transition scenario where the world's governments look to rapidly reduce CO2 emissions, the role of LNG will be even more pronounced in the years ahead than in a business as usual transition scenario. And that's because of the rapid shutting down of coal-fired power plants that would be required, and therefore the increased contribution of gas to the energy mix. The Northern Territory shale gas basins, the Beetaloo and McArthur, truly have globally significant scale. So to give you a sense of that, they have roughly the same resource potential as the Marcellus shale. The Marcellus now produces over 30% of America's natural gas and has really been responsible for a proliferation of manufacturing in the northeast of America. 2.7 million jobs have been created in the US oil and gas sector. As a result of shale, the average US household energy bill has now been reduced by around $800 a year. You know, we have this same potential in Australia, and Empire's really proud to be part of unlocking it. The Beetaloo is very different to US shale basins in one major respect, and that is the age of these rocks. The source rocks of the Beetaloo Basin are around 1.4 billion years old. This is around 1 billion years older than most of the US oil and gas basins. Every basin in the world is different, and we have to look from a technical perspective about how to open them up in a different way for each basin. But there are serious learnings that we can take from the US shale basins based on some key technical similarities. And what we've seen is that in a number of the key aspects that drive the commercial success of US shale basins, the Beetaloo has a number of similarities. The US shale sector has really transformed not only their oil and gas sector, but their overall economy. So now over 70% of natural gas production in America comes from shale. Over 60% of oil production comes from shale. The US unconventional oil and gas sector commenced with coal bed methane, or coal seam methane as we call it here in Australia, and yet shale quickly overtook it because it's so much more efficient as a way to produce gas. You know, in Australia we've seen a $50 billion investment boom happen with coal bed methane in Queensland, and so we're only just scratching the surface in terms of the potential of shale, and particularly in the Beetaloo and McArthur basins. Not only is the shale sector transforming the US economy and giving them affordable energy and millions of jobs, but also the technological advances are rapid and really globally significant. So the Marcellus shale, which as I mentioned produces over 30% of America's natural gas, is getting more and more efficient by the day, and this slide really illustrates that well. So this is the average productivity per rig of wells drilled in the Marcellus, and as you can see from the blue line, the efficiency of drilling and the productivity of these wells is just continuing to accelerate all the time. And what's really exciting for us here in Australia is that we can leverage off those learnings that the US has already had. So after having had a great 2020 as a company, you know, we're really proud of the fact that we've been able to carry out the drilling of Carpentaria 1. We're certainly not resting on our laurels. We've got a big program ahead of us next year. We've designed this well in a manner which will allow us to come back in and do further appraisal and development activities. We take environmental stewardship very seriously as a company. We know that there is considerable and justified community concern about our activities and our industry. When I speak to Northern Territorians and traditional owners in particular, the key concern that I often hear is the protection of aquifers. This is a responsibility that we as a company take very seriously. To give you a sense of what we do to protect the aquifers, first of all, the aquifers are between surface and around 100 to 150 metres below surface. As we drill through those aquifers, we set casing, which is high-grade steel. Then cement is put around that casing to ensure that it's in place and forming a good barrier to the outer rock. Then another layer of steel casing comes through for the next drill string, and more cement comes all the way around that. And then in our well, a third layer of steel casing and cement around that goes all the way down to the target depth of the well. So what this means is as we go through the aquifers with this well, there is now in place 3 layers of steel, cement, steel, cement, steel, cement, and that creates a very hard impermeable barrier to protect the aquifers from the flow of hydrocarbons and fracking fluids inside the wellbore. Not only do we have these very strong protections in place, but also there are water monitoring bores on our well pad which have been drilled up and downstream of the oil and gas well, and we regularly take samples from these wells to ensure that there is no change to the water quality of the aquifers as a result of our activities. So we take this responsibility very seriously, and this now puts us in a good position to carry out further appraisal activities next year. So we are currently planning that in Q2 of next year, we'll carry out a fracture stimulation and flow test of the Valkyrie. That is likely to be a vertical fracture stimulation so that we can test the Valkyrie A, B and C and potentially the intra AB. That will allow us to work out the optimal mix of both flow rates from each zone, but also the contribution of liquids. And then that will allow us to plan for the drilling of a horizontal well with multiple fracture stimulation stages, so we can look to start moving towards further drilling and development activities. So we've got a big year ahead of us, but thank you all very much for your time today. It's great to be back in Darwin for SEAAOC, and I look forward to catching up with you soon. Cheers.